came to be in Hull because we'd recently moved back from London via Calcutta, where I first went to school. And the reason we moved to Hull was that my father decided that he was going to quit his job as patent and trademark agent and buy a garage because he loved cars, vintage cars and stuff like that. And we'd all moved to Hull. So that's how we found ourselves there. My father did take me to one thing, this is a complete digression, in Hull that I was absolutely magical to me. I was 15 and he took me to see Paul Robeson sing at Hull City Hall because Paul Robeson had liked what Hull had done for black people, for people of colour. And actually Hull was the home of the abolitionist William Wilberforce, as well as the first aviatrix to fly to Australia, Amy Johnson, as well as Philip Larkin, as well as Andrew Marvell, et al. I didn't really know about art schools. I just assumed you went to the nearest one. You know, we had virtually no contact with the world outside. You know, we went on holidays elsewhere, but Hull was the basis. Hull, you know, Ferren's Art Gallery. Didn't even go to that till I was about 16. My parents didn't think to take me, and I didn't know of its existence. It's shocking, isn't it? Actually, it's a bit earlier than that, because yeah, but it was relatively late. And Hull was there, you know. It was very old school, very militaristic. There were some redeeming tutors, but the person that really affected me was somebody called Gerald Hardy, who taught drawing. And we had a kind of a sort of a kind of a push-pull relationship. And I think he was very fond of me in a sort of he had to put up with a lot. I found a book on primitive art with photographs of ritual masks from Africa and Oceania, South America, the Americas. You know, the text was dull and patronising. The images were really exciting, even knowing nothing of their purpose or significance. They carried a power which somehow got into my visual thoughts. Primitive art that was anything but primitive. You could immediately see the connection with French painting, Picasso's and Braque's, many people of that period. You saw where it was all coming from. I hadn't drawn from people before, so I'd never drawn my siblings or my mother or father or anything like that. It hadn't occurred to me, you know. My knowledge of what artists actually did was pretty much zero. So to that extent, Hull Art School did open my eyes, and I went to the Ferrens a lot. And it was at a period when the Ferrens was evolving. It had Michael Compton was the head of Ferrens at that time, who went on to be somewhere high at the Tate. But he brought Hockneys, he brought Chadwick's, Paolotzzi's. What really excited me was seeing the first Hockney painting, very recently done, and it was the one with the tea packet, and I thought, God, this is great. This is good. I didn't want to be like that, but it was something that it meant, it showed that there were many ways to do things. One very useful part of being at Hull Art School was that their library was very good. My introduction to the old masters was predominantly from books that I borrowed from the library and copied. You know, I copied Velasquez on small scales. I copied particularly Daumier, who has remained with me. Gerald Harding's particular god was Ang, because of the line, and that was it. That sort of informed the way that I draw. I love the fact that you can convey volume simply by contour, and that became something which I was very interested in. I had friends at Hull, Harry Duffin, and his friend, the Svengali kind of figure, George Hartley. George and Jean Hartley founded the Marvel Press, and they published Larkin's second volume of poems, The Less Deceived, which was the volume which really set him on the track. It was and is a masterpiece. It's a wonderful volume. So I got to meet Philip Larkin, and I didn't get to draw him. I wrote to him, and he said he was beyond flattery so far as his face was concerned. Hull was sort of gradually emerging from a great post-war depression. When we arrived there in 1949, it was bombed out. It had the guts bombed out of it, and particularly the docks and Dockland all around there. But in the city itself, right beside the Hull Art School, used to be the Cecil Cinema. It was on the corner of a block. It was huge, but it was entirely bombed. It had been bombed, and it was left as a shell inside. When I was a kid, my cousins and I actually got into the shell of the building, and it was really eerie and wonderful, but we didn't think of how it had come to be. It was just sort of an exciting place. As a teenager, I liked to go to the clubs, which they were dodgy. There was a lot of rivalry between the newly emerging teddy boys and the fishermen. And these guys, the fishermen, were incredible because they had very expensive suits made as they thought that American suits would be. So they were big, flappy trousers in pastel colours, but they all carried knives, razors, flick knives. And the teddy boys, the same. I used to go to a club called Locarno, and I used to make little drawings. This is by the time I was at art school, of them dancing. I had to be surreptitious because I did, it was, again, not something you would really want to be seen doing. But remember that the music stopping suddenly and then starting again almost momentarily, and somebody being carried out and somebody else being carried out in a different way, and that somebody had been stabbed there, and not fatally, but enough to make a lot of blood on the floor. And it was pretty dodgy. The dancing thing sort of led on naturally to watching singers on the black and white television, and one evening the Ronettes came on. They'd just come over, and they were absolutely fantastic. I made a lot of drawings from memory from the television and began a series of painting. I'm not quite sure how I came to be so obsessed with the Ronettes. I became interested in the three female figures. Later on I read Robert Graves', The White Goddess, which is not about the White Goddess, it's about goddesses and mythology and so forth, but it is all about female characters historically. And the triple goddess features there. It's not that the Ronettes are a triple goddess, but I'm interested in this little things feeding into each other. There is something somewhat mysterious in the three-figure thing. It crops up in Christianity and other things, somehow or other. I didn't see why. And in Christianity it's all male, of course. But I didn't see why it shouldn't be all female.